And we are live. And this is kind of exciting. We're live for the NBA strategy show, everybody. It is Sunday, January 12th. Yes, this is the first Sunday NBA strategy show we've had for the season. NFL regular season is gone, baby. And that means the NBA is here. I'm Josh Engleman, here to break down a six-gamer. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. What's up, everybody? Good morning. Good morning. We're here. We're doing it now. Now, this is going to be not as in-depth as maybe a week show would be because it's still an NFL Sunday, and the DraftKings and FanDuel don't seem to care about us too much on the NBA side. But we're here for it. We're absolutely here for it. So we're going to just take a lap through the games. Nothing crazy. I'm guessing we'll be here, 45 minutes or so. We got a big schedule of NFL stuff coming up. I'm a little blurry. Fix that. There we go. That feels a little bit better. Yeah, well, we'll take our lap through. We'll see where we stand. 6 p.m. lock tonight. We've got 4 games that lock at 6 o'clock. Then we have an 8 o'clock game and a 9 o'clock game. And I'm going to be honest with you, this slate is pretty dreadful. Pels, Celtics, real rough. Pacers, Cavs is solid. Sixers, Magic is not. Thunder, Wizards is not. Brooklyn, Utah is not. Charlotte, Phoenix is not. So we don't have a ton of great basketball, but that's okay. We do have a ton of DFS to talk about. And I don't mean Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm going to take one sip of coffee, and we're going to get this bad boy going. So I know we're not going to have a ton of people in here. 9 o'clock on a Sunday, on an NFL Sunday. So I know this is going to be a relatively thin herd. That's okay. We'll have some fun. Big House says, thanks for getting up so early. Big House, I have been awake since 4:30 this morning. So this is like my afternoon at this point. So I'm happy to be up with you guys, but I've been up for a bit. Yeah. It's been a morning. It's been a morning. Wife is on the other side of the country in San Francisco, which means I have sole responsibility of managing my dogs, one of which is a dream. Nothing to worry about. Great dude to have around. The other is a hellion and a constant terror of never knowing what he's going to do. So, yeah, I'm a little sleepy. Chowdy said, didn't know there was an NBA strategy show on Sunday. That's because there wasn't until today. This is the first one. We're popping the NBA strategy show Sunday cherry today. I probably shouldn't have said that. Whatever. We're fine. Let's break down some basketball, shall we? The New Orleans Pelicans are 2 touchdown underdogs in Boston. 226 total. Now, for the Pellies, I don't know who Keon Brooks is, but it says that he's not with the team. He must be new. Brandon Ingram out, Herb Jones out, and it's likely Herb Jones is going to be done for the year. Trey Murphy, though, back after that left ankle sprain. DeJounte Murray, though, questionable for this one. And as of right now, and this should be essentially no surprise, this is a massive pace down spot for the Pelicans. I guess I should add their normal pace. Do I have that? Where do I compare that to? So, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Now I know where I look it up. All right, so we will look up Pelicans pace. I need this as a reference point. I don't know why I didn't have it in here already. So it makes some sense drop that in there now. Perfect. Perfect. Nope, not perfect. Figure that out at a later date. Anyway, the Pelicans don't look good. That's the main takeaway. 3% ownership to Yves Missi on DraftKings is the most of anybody on the Pels. Now, DeJounte Murray did get to 9% ownership on FanDuel, which I think looks reasonable. But pace down spot for New Orleans. Obviously, no matter how many times Boston plays down to their opponents, they're still a really good defense. They're at full strength. This is a not good spot for the Pels. And I don't even think that these guys are like under-owned by all that much. I mean, I had 6% optimal to Murray, 6% optimal to Zion. Those guys are unowned. And those are the two high marks. If I'm going to anybody here, it's either Murray or Missi. But I think the more likely scenario is just avoiding the New Orleans Pelicans. This seems like a really difficult spot to get to anything from the Pels other than just like last guy in one of the starters. I truly don't like this at all. Do you guys like anything from the Pels today? Nick Plum, time to trade Zion. It's tricky because, like, it kind of goes against all logic because you don't want to get rid of something at its lowest value. But at the same time, if Zion had value, then you don't want to trade him. So he's in it's a really weird scenario. Like most of these questions, it sort of comes down to what could you get for him? And I have to believe that there is at least one, if not two teams. And that's really what you need. You need two teams. You need enough to create a bidding war. And I would imagine you could get that from somebody where you want to be able to get a lot back. Because we all know what the ceiling is if Zion just gets like addicted to salads for the next year. We know what this guy is at his best. Very difficult to slow down, very difficult to guard. Dynamic offensive player. Probably not the guy that we ever expected him to be now, but if this guy just really embraces just like meat and vegetables and not fast food and whatever else he's eating in New Orleans, baked goods, I don't know what it is. I mean, this guy must be eating nonstop. I mean, it's hard. New Orleans has great food, but like, you should average more points per game than beignets per day. And I'm not confident that Zion is getting that ratio correct right now. Gil Torres, if Murray gets ruled out, does Alvarado or Hawkins come into play at just above minimum price? That's a great question. So, because that is really the only talking point we have for New Orleans. And last time out, we obviously saw no Herb Jones, no Zion, obviously no Brandon Ingram, but we did have Murray. We did get Hawkins starting in that spot. If we don't have Murray, I think we're probably taking a little bit of a closer look at Jose Alvarado. He'll certainly become a much better value and playable. We would need the starting lineup more than anything, but Alvarado would get a bump there, and then I think you see a little bit of a bump to Hawkins as well. Hawkins not the best per minute guy. I just don't think this matchup is going to create anything, even with Murray out. Oh, Steven, I'm with you there too. Although it depends on the team. It completely depends on the team. If you are like super win now and a little older, then yeah, it's Butler. Most teams would want to like take a run at Zion. I mean, where would he fit the best? Atlanta, no. Boston, I mean, yeah, but no. Brooklyn, no. Charlotte, no. I mean, Chicago, sort of. But no. So this would be the interesting one. And I know this just takes me back to the same conversation we had a couple days ago, but could you get him to Cleveland and then have Evan Mobley be the 5? That would start to get pretty crazy, but that seems like it would mess up the vibes in Cleveland right now. So to me, that's a no. Could you get him to Denver? Like, for real, could you get him to Denver? That's a real question. Because I think if you could, that's the move. If I'm Denver, I'm thinking, can Zion be the 4 next to Jokic? Can Zion be a small ball 5 when Jokic is off the floor? Or is Zion Williamson going to keep eating that he's somehow he plays the 6? But it's Denver the move. I kind of like that one. But again, this all comes down to what is the price? And that one is a little squirrely. Like, Zion's making 36.7. Michael Porter Jr. makes 35.8. You can trade Michael Porter Jr. and Zion essentially for each other. You don't really have to add anything else to any of these guys. Like, salary-wise, this one just works, which means that it just comes down to picks. The problem is the Nuggets are pretty thin on available firsts, and they could probably add another body if they needed to. But, like, they could trade 2031 unprotected, and then they would have 3 swaps in 26, 28, and 30. You guys stay glazing Joker. Why? Who wouldn't? What? Yeah, that would be a terrible idea to just really like that guy that's been the best player in basketball for 5 years. Zion go down there depicted. Not sure you know what those words mean. It'll be fun. Depleted. Yeah. Yeah, that's what happens when people get hurt and aren't playing. They have less people available. Nick, I agree. I agree, but what they have right now is probably not the answer. So do you swing for the fences and hope that Jokic, a once doughy dude, could help Zion a little bit? Does a guy that won a title already and is the best player in the world, could that be the motivating factor that doesn't exist in New Orleans? I don't know. But I'd like to see it. I would not like to see the Boston side of this Pelicans game, though, because while some of it looks okay and is reasonably owned, it's also terrifying because of what the line is here. Although they're not the biggest favorite on the day. We got about 15% ownership coming into Jason Tatum. We got just shy of 15 coming into Jaylen Brown. And then we've got Porzingis around 10. Essentially no ownership to Derek White or to Drew Holiday. Now, I think Tatum is properly owned at 17%. Prince, why don't the Pelicans have anyone supervising Zion's eating habits? Because he's an adult. What do you? They're not going to strap him into a chair and feed him via the airplane on a spoon, man. He's a grown man. What do you want them to do? What happens when he goes home? They're not going to chain up his refrigerator. There's. You don't think they want to do that? I mean, he doesn't live in the arena. I'm sure that's exactly what they want. Oh, man. You can imagine David Griffin being like, oh, shit, why didn't we think of that? Why didn't we get somebody to make sure he eats better? Yeah, I bet they've never thrown that shit against the wall. Yeah. Incredible. Incredible. All right, so we got Tatum. Who was the last NBA player with a weight clause written into the contract? Way more than you would ever believe. It's a lot of people. I've seen, I just saw a clip of like Ryan Fitzpatrick talking about it for the NFL. They're way more common than it seems. It's just very rare that anybody has such a problem with it. Okay. If I'm ranking the Boston Celtics, it would go Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, although the fact that he's center only is like a little unappealing. To me, it's a little bit easier to want to grab Derek White, then Porzingis, and then Drew Holiday. But they're at full strength. Everybody that's like their main 9-man rotation is here today, which means it's impossible to get to Peyton Pritchard. It's impossible to get to Sam Hauser. You obviously don't want to get to Luke Cornett. This is a starting 5 only sitch. Maybe you could roll the dice on Al Horford. But it's Tatum. It's Brown. Technically, from an ownership standpoint, it's Porzingis. Our other pay-up options are Shea at 10.7, and then Tatum at 10.5 is the only other current 10K plus guy. So the only scary part here is, does Boston just beat the poop clean out of the Pels? They probably do. But if they do, somebody had to do it. And I think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are as good a bet as any. Pacers, 9.5 point dogs in Cleveland, 239 total. I have this tied for the fastest pace at 99.8, and this is the highest total of today's slate. We're getting around 10% ownership to Benedict Mathurin, just north of 10%, on Miles Turner and Andrew Nembhard. Speaking of the rest of these guys here, the Q tags don't seem to matter. It's Freeman and Quentin Jackson. Those guys aren't going to be playing either way. And I basically have the starting lineup looking pretty similar. Halliburton, 13% optimal, 26% boom. Tyrese Halliburton is under-owned at 6% for sure. Definitely like him in GPPs if this game is going to be competitive. Benedict Mathurin, properly owned at 10%. Turner and Nembhard, both properly owned at 13%. Siakam, the minutes have been weird, but 7% owned, probably a little light. At least for Halliburton on this slate, given the fact that pay-ups are a little different, he needs 49. Does it seem likely against Cleveland? No. Not a good matchup going up against a really good Cleveland defense, but I'm happy to get any one of these starters. Like, Indy definitely looks better than anything that you could get for New Orleans. And I would argue they look quite a bit better than the Boston side did. I would rank the Pacers, Halliburton, Mathurin, Nembhard, Turner, Siakam. And then TJ McConnell is 3,500 now. It is not going to take a crazy scenario for him to fall into a couple extra minutes and blow a 6% ownership number out of the water. On a day like today, you need like 25 fantasy points out of McConnell. What if he just plays 3 extra minutes? He plays 20. That's 1.25 fantasy points per minute for McConnell. That's not even that great of a game. So I think his ownership is a little low for the kind of slate that we have today. So I kind of like McConnell as a sneak option, but I'm interested in Indy regardless, even in a difficult spot against the Cavs. Now, those Cavs almost have everybody available. Ty Jerome is doubtful with an illness today. We're getting 15% ownership to Evan Mobley, 10 to Donovan Mitchell, 30 to Darius Garland, and another 20 to Jared Allen. I think that getting to Strus or LeVert are both reasonable value options. If I'm ranking Cleveland, I think Evan Mobley is the top option. I would rather have Mobley than Garland, especially because of the ownership. But I had those guys grading out very similar. You have the power forward center eligibility for Evan Mobley. It's point guard only for Darius Garland. It's not that they both don't look good, but I prefer Mobley to Garland. Garland would be my number 2. Although, if you guys can see it on the screen, I have Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, both 15% optimal, and both with a 27% chance to boom. Now, Mitchell's target score is 48.5. Garland's is 43.5. But I think they're both 27% to hit those marks. And yet, Donovan Mitchell, 9% owned. Darius Garland, 29% owned. And Mitchell has the MPE. Now, obviously, you're paying a little bit extra for him. Better per minute guy. I think Donovan Mitchell is quite a bit underowned. Even more so than Halliburton on the opposite side, because you get that extra position. So if I'm ranking Cleveland, it's Mobley as my number 1 guy. It's Mitchell 2, Garland 3, Jared Allen 4. Donovan Mitchell in GPPs today looks damn sneaky. But keep an eye on that ownership, because if Mitchell and Garland just flatten out a little bit, then they both look equal. But if we are going to see this 3-to-1 disparity, I'm a bit more interested in Donovan Mitchell. Nick, I don't really see that one coming. I think there are better options for it. No one should want Clarkson. He sucks. Clarkson's awful. Anybody could have him for essentially nothing. But Sexton back to Cleveland would be very weird to me. And not at all what they need, I don't think. But Clarkson's a hardcore no. I mean, Sexton's making $18 million. Like, the only way you're really doing that is if you don't think you're going to sign... If you don't believe you're going to re-sign Karis LeVert, then I think you could try to use LeVert's salary to do something. It wouldn't be Sexton for me, though. All right, let's go to game number 3. Philadelphia 76ers are 1.5-point dogs in Orlando, 206 total. This is the slowest game on today's slate, and it is the lowest total by 9 full points. And, not that it's surprising at all, we do not know the status of Joel Embiid, who is questionable. No Drummond, no Lowry, no Martin, no McCain. I will say this, at least when I started this show, and I'll look it up again just to be sure. So right now, the line is Orlando minus 1.5. If Joel Embiid is in, I have Philly as the favorite here by 2.5. So it is making me think that Embiid is not playing. However, if he does play, then I think the line moves. So go whichever direction you guys think is best. The only guy getting any love right now, assuming Embiid is in, is Embiid. He's 15% owned. Maxi's 1, Oubre's 2, Paul George's 1. Yes, I think you could probably get a little bit more than 1% ownership to Maxi, Oubre, and George. But when Embiid is there, all of these guys are generally less interesting. Humble, Embiid by 1,000,000,000%. Embiid would stomp his ass. The question was, who would win in a fight between Embiid and Zion? The answer is 100% Embiid. Assuming he has ever been in a fight in his life. I would take Embiid quickly. Size difference is a lot. Yeah, like Paul George looks a little sneaky today. Now, if Embiid ends up out, we're probably going to play some Yabusele. We'll have the ability to sneak into a 3K Adam Bona. And then obviously Maxi and Oubre and George get a bit of a bump. But we need this news, and it's a 6 o'clock start. So we will get this news somewhere for sure in that 5 to 6 window. If Embiid's in, I think 15% ownership is too high. 9,700. Like, is that good? Is he that much better than some of the? I don't think so. I don't think so. Should he be 10% owned? Yeah, absolutely. Like, Embiid should be probably the most owned guy. You can make a case that should actually be Kelly Oubre. But I get the ceiling of Embiid. I think there are better options out there. I really don't like much of Philly. Obviously, massive pace down spot for the Sixers. Horrific defensive matchup. No matter who seems to be healthy for Orlando, their defense is incredible. I think it's very difficult to want to prioritize anything from the Philadelphia 76ers in this matchup, knowing what they're facing. And what they're facing is the Orlando Magic. And we got a monster game out of Paolo Banchero in his return in 27 minutes. He smashed. Now, he's still 9,500 on DraftKings. I don't think we're going that way. There's no ownership coming into Orlando except 60% ownership coming into Cole Anthony. 5,700, point guard, shooting guard eligible. Got really nice minutes again with Paolo back. I had Cole Anthony 23% optimal, a 42% chance of scoring 35 fantasy points. He is currently my number 3 play of the day. 60% ownership is a tad high, but I'm not surprised to see it. The spot's a little bit better for Orlando than it is for Philly. Assuming he's out there playing 30 minutes, he's one of the best plays of the day. I think you're getting to a lot of them. If you're playing cash games, Cole Anthony is one of, if not the first name you're clicking on to build that lineup. So, if you're playing anything for Orlando, it's Cole Anthony. I think it's reasonable if you want to use someone like Tristan da Silva as a GPP pivot at low ownership. He's a 0.75 fantasy point per minute guy. He's, a 17% usage dude. He's not exactly efficient. But he's small forward, power forward eligible, 4,800, and he plays real minutes. He's playing 32 minutes today. I don't hate that ownership. I don't really see much else that you could do here. I don't trust the Goga Wendell Carter Jr. relationship right now. You're just not playing Paolo yet. And KCP is pretty uninteresting. So it is the Cole Anthony show in Orlando, everybody. All righty. Halfway done. You guys want an Odd Shopper promo? There's a link in the description of this video. You can sign up at Odd Shopper and get 59% off with the promo code EV59. And all we're talking about here is a promo for the Super Bowl. It's Super Bowl 59. If you guys want to sign up and take a market-based approach to beating sports books and pick'em sites, we have parlay builders. We got Pick'em card builders. We show you EV, expected win rate, the bet size that you guys should be using. It's the perfect way to get into sports betting or Pick'em, and you can do it very cheaply for 59% off using that EV59 promo code. Alrighty. We head to game number 4, the Oklahoma City Thunder. 16-point favorites in Washington. 230 total. Tied for the second fastest game. But this is going to be, or at least it should be, quite the beating. Look at the ownership that we are getting to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are 200% owned. Only one other team got north of 100. Raymond Clark, how come no Liverpool? They're playing right now. Because they're not playing right now? So that's probably why. They are literally not playing right now. Everybody on OKC looks amazing. 40% ownership to Shea. 25 to Jalen Williams. Just shy of 20 to Dort. 25 to Hartenstein. 45 to Cason Wallace. 45 to Aaron Wiggins. And then around 5 for Isaiah Joe. 5 for Kenrich Williams. Yeah, Raymond, that was yesterday, brother. That game already happened, but if you think it's live, I'll bet you whatever amount of money you want that Liverpool wins 4-0. I'll even pick the goal scorers. So I'll bet you $1,000 they win 4-0. Oh, darling, the pup's doing good. Look, we all know how bad Washington is. They're the worst team in the league. They're an incredible fantasy matchup. Shea is one of my top plays. It's 26% optimal, 40% boom. He's my preferred payout by a mile. A mile. Do I think that Cason Wallace is a tad overowned? Sorta, but he's 3,700 point guard, shooting guard eligible against the Wizards. Aaron Wiggins, do I think he's a little overowned? Sorta, but he's 3,200 small forward, power forward eligibility. Looks great. Any chance the Thunder won a Kuzma? No. We're getting 25% ownership to Jalen Williams and Isaiah Hartenstein. Seems pretty reasonable to me. Dort looks great. Isaiah Joe has played a lot more minutes over his last 2 games. He's only 6% owned. Got to assume he's going to get a bunch of open looks against the Washington Wizards. If that happens, Isaiah Joe is going to rain down threes. I think he looks pretty sneaky. If Cason Wallace and Aaron Wiggins are both 40% owned and Isaiah Joe is 6, I shouldn't have to explain what you need to do there. Joe is undervalued in that situation. I have it 13, 8, and 13 for optimal rates. You want to tell me that Cason Wallace and Wiggins should be twice as owned as Isaiah Joe? I can handle that. But if Joe is 10, then you're probably thinking that Wallace and Wiggins should be like 20 to 25. There's an easy way to redistribute those dudes. But either way, OKC is very clearly the best option. If I'm ranking all of OKC, it would be Shea in his own tier, Jalen Williams. Then I would go to the value guys of Wallace, Wiggins, and Joe. Then I would go Isaiah Hartenstein. Then I would go Lou Dort. But Joe and Wiggins look amazing. We got to remember, they only have that, like, they're not drowning in real bodies. I believe they only have 11 active roster dudes right now. And if that's the case, you're getting Brandon Carlson, Alex Dukas, probably Wiggins, Joe, and something else, Kenrich, as blowout run in this one. And that's sort of the appealing reason of Wallace, Joe, and Wiggins. There's a decent chance that 2 out of those 3 guys are playing, even if this one becomes a beating. It's hard to avoid this Washington Wizards team. It really is. It really is. But Shea's the priority. I mean, 42% ownership is just not... Who slows him down? 10-7, point guard only. You only need 58.5. It's a 6-game slate. We're not going up against any of the main pay-ups. There's no Nikola Jokic. There's no Giannis. There's no Hector Banana Bread. None of these guys are here. It's Shea and it's Tatum, and that's it for pay-ups. So get yourself Shea, but get yourself all of OKC. I think you probably want 2 Thunder dudes in everything you're doing, and you can get upwards of 3, given the prices on Wallace, Joe, Wiggins, even Dort to a degree. But OKC looks amazing. You know who doesn't look amazing? The Washington Wizards, who are projected for the least amount of ownership on the slate. 7%. That's lower than the Pelicans. 4% to SAR is the most of anybody. Now, I would argue that $4,500 Bub Carrington is under-owned. I would argue that you could probably get a share of Kuzma if you wanted to. But these guys are all active now, except for Malcolm Brogdon, who's like permanently not active. Give me everything for OKC. Give me basically nothing for Washington. But I do think Bub Carrington is under-owned. You only need like 30 fantasy points out of him. Is he a good per minute dude? Nope. 0.78. You get a fantasy point per minute out of him for 30 minutes, and he could be in a winning lineup for you. But this one's going to be bad. This one's going to be bad. OKC should beat the brakes off of Washington here. So be prepared for it. It's an ugly game. You know what's not ugly, guys? That would be the schedule that we have here for the rest of today. And I know you guys are going to want to know it. So, coming up at 10:30 a.m., Greg Ehrenberg is going to be here, and he's going to do a lineup building show for the NFL. He's going to use our single lineup sim. He's going to build out some lineups with you guys for a half hour for today's 3-game NFL slate. Then, Laffy and Ben will be here for an hour at 11 o'clock for the NFL Deeper Dive. They're going to dig into each game today, and they are going to give you a full breakdown across the board of everything that exists today. And then you're going to get Eric and Matt Gajewski at 12 p.m. for NFL Live Before Lock. So we're going to have 2.5 hours straight of NFL coverage today for today's 3 games. And then tonight, Emac and Bellman at 7:15 are going to do an NFL Live Before Lock for tonight's game. Gotta love the showdown streets. If you guys are interested in the 7:15 NFL Live Before Lock before Commanders and Bucks, congratulations, everybody. You will get that Live Before Lock today. 2 games to go. Oh, let me hit that quote. Ryan, do you like Butler? He will get 20 minutes plus blowout run at 4K. Well, he won't get 20 minutes plus blowout run. And no, I have absolutely no interest in Jared Butler, but you're adding those minutes up incorrectly. He will get 20 minutes because of blowout run. He will not be getting 20 minutes plus blowout run. Alrighty, Brooklyn Nets. 3.5 point dogs in Utah. 215 total. This is the second lowest total on today's slate, but we are getting quite a bit of ownership. And that's because most of these guys for Brooklyn that are actual basketball players are out. No Boyan, no Cam Johnson, no Max Lewis, Melton, Russell, Thomas, Watford. Dariq Whitehead could be available today. Getting a little over 15% ownership to Clowney and Tyrese Martin. Just shy of 15 on Zaire Williams and Day'Ron Sharpe. And then scattered ownership for your Keon Johnsons, your Nick Claxtons, your Ben Simmons, your Jalen Wilsons. I don't think these guys look as good as their public ownership. I think Noah Clowney is a tad over-owned at 18% ownership. Should probably be in that like 10 to 15 range. I think Tyrese Martin is a bit over-owned at 17%. I think he should be around 10. Zaire Williams at 13 is probably about right. Day'Ron Sharp's up to 4,300. He's 12% owned. Probably a little high. Claxton looks okay. Jalen Wilson looks okay. Keon Johnson, probably the guy that I would want the most. And it's not even like I want too much of him. He's 8% owned. He should probably be around 10. There's not a single priority to me for Brooklyn. This offense is... The offense right now of the guys that are available, it's the worst offense in the league, and it's not even close. It's really bad. And these guys don't exactly have advantageous pricing. Like, only Tosan Uwoman is sub 4K of anybody that's going to play real minutes. But he's a terrible per minute guy. Small forward, power forward eligible, but I got him at 0.7 fantasy points per minute. He shouldn't be getting any ownership. I think Brooklyn as a whole is over-owned. I think at best you're looking for one of them. But to me, it's pretty hard to separate Johnson, Claxton, Clowney, Wilson, Williams, Martin, Simons. By Simons, I mean Simmons. They all don't look very good to me. I think Brooklyn is overrepresented in the ownership for right now. Now, Utah is a different story today. We do not know their current injury report. However, it's looking pretty bleak. As we look at Utah right now, because they're on the back-to-back, we're going to have to get this injury report. But it doesn't seem like we are going to have Lauri Markkanen today, or John Collins, or Keontae George, or Jordan Clarkson, or Johnny Juzang. And we don't even really know if we're going to have Bryce Sensabaugh. But what we do know is that we're projecting 15% ownership to Walker Kessler, which feels fine. Around 10 for Isaiah Collier, who might just be my preferred option today if all that injury news is right. I got him in for 29 minutes. Think he's wildly under-owned. Sexton's coming in at 25% ownership. Looks spot on. Micah Potter is coming in at 2, and he's the flat 3K. To me, he looks better than anything else on Brooklyn if the injury statuses that I'm assuming are correct. Kyle Filipowski is currently projected for 40% ownership. I think that Potter and Filipowski will basically split that ownership as we move forward. I like Potter more than I like Filipowski, but both of those guys look pretty interesting. And then Bryce Sensabaugh, if he plays, 28% ownership, looks good. Now, I don't want to dig too much into Utah because we don't have the injury report. We're going to have to wait till 1:30 or 2:30 to get this. But as of right now, this is the second most owned team behind OKC, and I don't really see that changing. We need to know who's in and out, clearly. But there are going to be some high-level value plays, whether that's Potter or Filipowski or both. Something's going to be good there. Assuming Collier is starting at point guard, he's going to look amazing today. Sexton will look great. If Sensabaugh is in, he's a really good per-minute guy. He will look good. We are going to roster a lot of Utah today, especially against this Brooklyn team. But we need their injury report and we need their news because that will dictate how all of this looks. Put Zion in Miami. He will be fine. He'll probably never play again if he tries to get in shape in Miami. That dude is going to explode if he tries to meet their cardio criteria. He might never get activated again. Steven, not to mention, I like having a lot of this game just for late swap purposes because you're locking 4 games at 6. No matter who ends up in, you'll be able to figure it out. Finally, Charlotte Hornets. 7-point dogs in Phoenix, 223 total. We are getting a little bit of love for Charlotte, but here's the deal. Both of these teams are on a back-to-back. We do not have an injury report for Charlotte or Phoenix. Assuming Charlotte is their normal team, LaMelo Ball is projected for 20% ownership, deserves every bit of it. I like paying that $9,700 price tag, 18% optimal, 30% chance at 54 fantasy points. He deserves every bit of 20% ownership. One of the better pay-ups of the day. Miles Bridges is 17% owned. 7,600 power forward. Maybe a hair too high, but definitely the second best option here. Should be in that 15% range. And then finally, Mark Williams. 6K. He's center only. He's 13% owned. Looks perfect to me. You're hoping to get a couple extra minutes. Maybe the game is competitive. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I forgot that they don't have their injury report because they were supposed to be on the back-to-back. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Brandon. So Mark Williams looks good. I don't see how you go to Brandon Miller at 8,200. I don't see how you go to Josh Green or Cody Martin or Nick Richards. To me, this is three guys. LaMelo on his own tier as an actual priority for the slate. Bridges and Mark Williams. Completely reasonable 10 to 15% owned dudes. But again, we need this injury report. And obviously we need it for Phoenix too. We don't know the status on Royce O'Neal right now. Who knows if they're going to have anybody else out. We're getting 15% ownership to KD and around 10 to Devin Booker. I would argue Devin Booker is underrepresented at 9,200. And I would argue that Kevin Durant is underrepresented at 18%. I have Durant 23% optimal, 33% chance of 52 fantasy points. I'd happily take a little bit more of Durant here. That looks good to me. I like Durant and I like Booker. There's not a chance I'm taking anybody else here. Are they going to play Nurk anymore? Doesn't seem like it. I don't really want to get to Mason Plumlee or Iguodaro or Ryan Dunn or Tyus Jones or Bradley Beal. I want Durant and I want Booker. And I want more Durant than Booker. Just to sum up my favorite plays before I dip on out of here. In terms of your best cash options, it's going to be Shea, it's going to be Cole Anthony, it's going to be some combination of Aaron Wiggins and Cason Wallace, Colin Sexton, LaMelo Ball. If we're talking GPP pivots, I'm a big fan of Collier right now. I think Micah Potter can be interesting by the time we get there. I would argue Donovan Mitchell, a little underowned. Devin Booker, a little underowned. Tyrese Halliburton, a little underowned. Kelly Oubre, like him in GPPs. That's where we're at, folks. That is where we're at. I'd like you guys to hit that like button if you can. Again, 4 games locking at 6, 1 at 8, 1 at 9. But at 10:30, about 45 minutes from now, Greg Ehrenberger is going to kick off 2.5 hours of our NFL coverage for today's 3-game playoff slate. Man, it's fun to be here for the NFL days now that we have the NBA back. Regular season is over. The NBA is here to stay, and I will be here every Sunday for you guys moving forward. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. I'm back tomorrow doing the same thing we did right now, breaking down a Monday. Have some fun, guys. Win some money in the NFL streets. I'll talk to you guys later.